Welcome to Wisp Tales. Today, we will explore the life of Anne Frank, a young girl whose courage and hope inspired the world. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929, in Frankfurt, Germany, into a Jewish family. Her father, Otto Frank, was a businessman, and her mother, Edith, took care of the household. Anne had an older sister named Margot, who was quiet and studious, while Anne was lively, curious, and full of imagination. From a young age, Anne loved to write. She would often make little notebooks for her stories and observations, filling them with her dreams and thoughts. The Franks lived in a comfortable home, but their lives began to change as the political situation in Germany worsened. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party were gaining power, and Jewish families faced increasing discrimination. Otto Frank recognized the danger and decided that the family should move to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, hoping for a safer life. Anne was only 4 years old when they left Germany, leaving behind friends, familiar streets, and their extended family. In Amsterdam, Anne and her family adapted to a new culture and language. Anne attended school and quickly made new friends. She was bright, cheerful, and always curious about the world around her. Despite the challenges of moving to a new country, Anne enjoyed reading, writing, and learning. She was known for her humor and energy, and even as a child, she had a special way of observing people and the world around her. Anne's life seemed happy and ordinary, but the shadows of war were approaching. The rise of Nazi power in Europe would soon change the course of her life forever. After moving to Amsterdam, Anne Frank quickly settled into her new life. The city was bustling and full of life, quite different from Frankfurt. Otto Frank found work in a business, and the family tried to live as normally as possible despite the growing threat of war. Anne attended the Montessori school, where she met many children from different backgrounds. She loved learning new things and was especially interested in literature and writing. Anne's personality shone brightly at school. She was outgoing, witty, and full of curiosity. Teachers often praised her intelligence and creativity. Outside school, Anne enjoyed playing with her friends, exploring the streets of Amsterdam, and learning Dutch, which became her second language. Her family tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, taking part in cultural events, visiting parks, and celebrating holidays. Despite the challenges, Anne had a happy childhood. She shared a close bond with her father, Otto, who supported her love for reading and writing. Margot, her older sister, was her companion, though Anne sometimes felt a little overshadowed by Margot's calm and obedient nature. Nevertheless, the sisters cared deeply for each other. Anne's mother, Edith, was protective, but often struggled to understand Anne's lively and adventurous spirit. However, the political climate in Europe was tense. The Nazi regime had started targeting Jewish communities across Germany, and soon the threat reached the Netherlands. Jews were gradually being restricted from attending certain schools, using public spaces freely, or even participating in normal life. Although Anne was still a young girl, she began to sense that life might change drastically. Anne's school days were filled with laughter, learning, and discovery, yet a shadow loomed over her world. Little did she know that soon she and her family would be forced into hiding, changing her life forever and shaping the story that would touch millions across the globe. By the late 1930s, the world around Anne Frank was changing rapidly. In Germany, Adolf Hitler had established his Nazi regime, and anti-Jewish laws were being enforced aggressively. Although Anne and her family had moved to Amsterdam seeking safety, the threat of war was creeping closer. In 1940, Germany invaded the Netherlands, and the Dutch people, including the Frank family, were suddenly living under Nazi occupation. Life became tense and uncertain, even for a young girl like Anne. The Nazis introduced strict rules targeting Jewish families. Jews were banned from public parks, theaters, swimming pools, and even certain shops. Jewish children had to attend separate schools, which were poorly funded and overcrowded. Anne and her classmates noticed these changes immediately. She saw her friends being excluded and treated unfairly simply because of their religion. For Anne, who had been cheerful and outgoing, this was confusing and frightening. She was only 10 years old, but she began to understand that the world could be cruel even for someone who had done nothing wrong. Anne's father, Otto, tried to shield the family from the harsh realities, but he also knew that safety was becoming harder to find. The Franks' life in Amsterdam, which had once seemed peaceful and promising, now required constant vigilance. People they knew began disappearing, taken away by soldiers or forced into camps. The once vibrant streets of Amsterdam became places of fear and suspicion. Anne, despite her young age, was incredibly observant. She noticed how people around her changed, how fear and distrust filled the air, and how the smallest actions could have big consequences. Her curiosity and intelligence made her ask questions that were often difficult to answer. She wanted to understand why people could be so cruel, why laws could punish innocent families, and why her friends could no longer play freely. At home, conversations were cautious. Otto and Edith Frank tried to maintain hope and normalcy for Anne and Margot, but the tension was undeniable. The family stocked up on essentials, knowing that life as they knew it might soon end. Anne began to sense that the world she had known, full of laughter, school, and play, was slipping away. She also discovered the power of writing during these years. Her notebooks became a safe place, a private world where she could express her feelings, fears, and dreams, something that would later become the famous Diary of Anne Frank. As the restrictions increased, Anne also began to see courage in unexpected places. Neighbors and friends who helped Jewish families, risking their own safety, showed her the importance of kindness and bravery. These experiences, both frightening and inspiring, shaped Anne's understanding of humanity. She realized that even in dark times, hope and resilience could exist. By the age of 12, Anne was no longer just a playful child. She was thoughtful, reflective, and beginning to understand the weight of the world around her. The changes in society, the constant threat of danger, and the stories of injustice she heard left a deep impression on her. Little did she know that soon she and her family would face the most difficult challenge of all, going into hiding. By 1942, the situation for Jewish families in Amsterdam had become extremely dangerous. The Nazis were rounding up Jewish citizens and sending them to labor and concentration camps. The Frank family knew that staying in their regular home was no longer safe. Otto Frank, always practical and thoughtful, realized that the only way to protect his family was to go into hiding. The plan was carefully thought out. Otto once worked in a business building with a hidden annex at the back, a small secret space that could be sealed off from the outside world. This annex was the future home where Anne, her family, and several others would live in complete secrecy. It was not comfortable or spacious, but it was safe. Edith, Otto, Anne, and Margot packed their belongings quickly, taking only essential items and a few treasured possessions. They left their home pretending to go about their normal day, knowing that any suspicion from neighbors could be deadly. On July 6, 1942, the Franks entered the secret annex. Alongside them were the Van Pels family, Herman, Augusta, and their son Peter, and later a dentist named Fritz Pfeffer joined them. Suddenly, Anne's world, which had been full of schools, playgrounds, and friends, became a confined space with very little freedom. For a lively, curious, and talkative girl like Anne, it was a dramatic change. Life in hiding was extremely challenging. The secret annex was small and cramped, with shared rooms, narrow stairways, and only limited sunlight.
The families had to be silent during the day to avoid detection from workers in the building below. Walking, talking, or even coughing too loudly could put them at risk. Anne, who was used to running and playing outdoors, suddenly had to remain quiet and careful at all times.
Despite the difficulties, Anne adapted remarkably well. She found solace in writing. Her diary, which she named Kitty, became her closest friend. Through her words, she expressed her fears, frustrations, dreams, and hopes. She wrote about life in the annex, the people around her, and her longing for freedom. Writing became a way for Anne to cope with the isolation and uncertainty, and it gave her a sense of control in a world that felt increasingly unpredictable. Anne's relationships in the annex were complex. She admired her father deeply and often confided in him, while her relationship with her mother was sometimes strained due to differing personalities and the stress of their circumstances. Anne and Margot supported each other, but like all siblings, they had moments of tension. Anne also developed a special bond with Peter Van Pels. Initially shy and reserved, Peter slowly became a companion for Anne, someone who understood her struggles and shared her hopes for the future. Daily life was structured carefully to ensure safety. The families divided chores like cooking, cleaning, and maintaining silence during work hours. Supplies were brought in by a trusted helper, Miep Gies, and a few other brave Dutch friends who risked their lives to help the hidden families. Every day was a delicate balance between survival and maintaining some sense of normal life. Anne, despite the confinement, continued to dream. She imagined traveling, studying, and experiencing the world beyond the annex. She wrote about becoming a journalist or a writer, and often reflected on her personal growth and the nature of humanity. Even in such a difficult time, Anne's spirit remained bright, curious, and hopeful. However, the danger outside the annex was real and constant. News of arrests and deportations reached them, reminding the families that at any moment their safety could be shattered. The fear was always present, but so was their courage, resilience, and determination to survive. The hidden annex, while restrictive, became a place where Anne's thoughts, creativity, and dreams could flourish, capturing the strength of a young girl in extraordinary circumstances. Life in the secret annex was a mixture of fear, tension, and small moments of joy. The hidden rooms were cramped, and privacy was nearly impossible. Each family had their own space, but everyone shared common areas, and the constant presence of others created a unique set of challenges. For Anne, who had always been lively and energetic, this confined life tested her patience and resilience daily. The routines in the annex were strict. During the day, when workers were present in the building below, everyone had to remain completely silent. No footsteps, no talking, no doors slamming. Every sound had to be carefully controlled. Anne often found this the hardest part. She missed running freely outside, laughing with friends, and simply enjoying the air without fear. Yet she quickly learned to adapt. She became skilled at tiptoeing, whispering, and moving carefully to avoid drawing attention. Despite these restrictions, the annex became a place of creativity and learning. Anne spent hours reading books, practicing her writing, and reflecting on the world outside. She wrote letters, short stories, and diary entries that explored her thoughts, fears, and dreams. Her imagination turned the confined space into a world of endless possibilities. In her diary, she expressed her deepest feelings, including her frustrations with living in close quarters, her longing for freedom, and her hope for a better future. Interactions with the other residents were both comforting and challenging. Otto Frank, her father, was a source of wisdom and guidance. He encouraged Anne to write and praised her intelligence, helping her maintain confidence and hope. Edith, her mother, was more strict and often worried about Anne's impulsive behavior.
Their relationship reflected typical family dynamics, intensified by the pressures of hiding. Margot, Anne's older sister, was quieter and more cautious, often serving as a stabilizing presence. Anne's friendship with Peter Van Pels developed slowly but meaningfully. At first, Peter was shy, reserved, and awkward, while Anne was talkative and spirited. Over time, they found comfort in each other's company. They shared conversations about their fears, hopes, and the life they dreamed of once the war ended. For Anne, Peter became not only a friend, but also someone who understood her unique spirit in a situation where trust and connection were rare and precious.
Every day brought new challenges. Supplies were limited, and the families depended on the kindness of a few brave helpers who risked their own safety to bring food, medicine, and news from the outside world. The constant fear of discovery loomed over them like a shadow. They could hear distant bombings, soldiers' footsteps, or rumors of arrests, which reminded them that their sanctuary could be broken at any moment. Despite the stress, Anne found ways to remain hopeful and resilient. She observed the small joys of life, the beauty of sunlight through a window, the taste of a warm meal, the laughter shared with others in moments of relief. These simple pleasures became powerful sources of comfort. Anne also reflected deeply on human nature, writing about kindness, cruelty, and the potential for both in every person. Her diary entries reveal a level of insight and maturity far beyond her years, capturing not only the struggles of a young girl in hiding, but also universal truths about humanity. In this confined world, Anne grew in courage, resilience, and understanding. She learned to navigate the complexities of relationships, manage fear and uncertainty, and express herself through writing. The secret annex, while a place of restriction and danger, also became a space for personal growth, reflection, and hope. Anne's experiences during these years would leave a lasting legacy, showing the world the strength of the human spirit, even in the darkest of times. As the months passed in the secret annex, life became increasingly tense. The small living space created challenges that tested everyone's patience, and the constant fear of discovery weighed heavily on the families. For Anne Frank, this period was both a struggle and a time of profound personal growth. The confined quarters forced the families to live very close together, and tensions often arose. Anne's personality, spirited, outspoken, and curious, sometimes clashed with the more reserved nature of Peter Van Pels and the quiet demeanor of her sister Margot. She also struggled with her relationship with her mother, Edith. Anne often felt that her mother didn't understand her, while Edith worried constantly about her daughter's behavior and impulsiveness. Otto Frank, understanding the pressures on everyone, often acted as a peacemaker, helping to soothe arguments and maintain harmony in the annex. Daily life required careful coordination. Every movement, every sound had to be measured to avoid detection by the workers below. Cooking, cleaning, and even walking from one room to another became exercises in caution and strategy. The families divided chores to ensure that no one was overwhelmed. Meals were simple, often repetitive, and dependent on the limited supplies provided by Miep geese and other helpers. Despite these hardships, the annex residents found ways to make life bearable, creating small routines and traditions that brought comfort. For Anne, writing became a vital outlet. Her diary was more than just a journal. It was her companion, confidant, and source of solace. She wrote about the frustrations of living in close quarters, the monotony of daily routines, and the fear that always lingered at the edges of their lives. Yet she also wrote about hope, dreams, and the beauty she still observed in the world. Anne's entries revealed a remarkable ability to reflect on her own emotions and the behavior of those around her, capturing the complexities of human nature in a time of crisis. The social dynamics in the annex were delicate. Peter Van Pels, initially shy and withdrawn, gradually opened up to Anne, forming a friendship that provided emotional support for both of them. Their conversations ranged from everyday matters to philosophical reflections on life and humanity. Anne often admired Peter's sensitivity and quiet strength, and Peter appreciated Anne's humor, intelligence, and courage. These moments of connection were precious, providing a sense of normalcy and companionship amid the constant stress of hiding. Fear was a constant companion. The news from the outside world, often brought by Miep, reminded the families of the dangers surrounding them. Stories of arrests, deportations, and violence made every day a test of resilience. Despite these threats, the annex residents found ways to maintain hope. They celebrated small occasions quietly, shared memories of happier times, and supported one another emotionally. Anne, in particular, sought to understand not only the external dangers, but also the inner strength required to endure them. Through these challenges, Anne matured rapidly. She developed a deep understanding of herself, learning patience, empathy, and the importance of resilience. She saw firsthand how fear could affect behavior, how courage could emerge in ordinary acts, and how hope could survive even in the most constrained circumstances. Her diary entries during this time reflect not only the struggles of life in hiding, but also the extraordinary growth of a young girl confronting a harsh reality with intelligence, creativity, and an enduring sense of humanity. The secret annex was a place of fear, tension, and confinement, yet it was also a crucible for personal growth. For Anne Frank, these years of hiding would become the defining period of her young life, shaping her understanding of the world and leaving a legacy that would inspire generations long after the war ended. Beyond the personal reflections, Anne's writing demonstrated a keen understanding of human nature. She observed the behavior of those around her parents, Margot, Peter, and the Van Pels family, with clarity and honesty. She noted how fear, stress, and uncertainty could influence people's actions, sometimes causing tension and conflict. Anne also recognized moments of kindness, bravery, and selflessness, documenting the courage of her father, the support of her friends, and the compassion of the helpers who risked their lives to bring food and news from the outside world. Anne's literary aspirations grew during this period. She dreamed of becoming a journalist or a writer, imagining a life in which her words could inform, inspire, and entertain people beyond the walls of the annex. She practiced her writing diligently, crafting short stories, essays, and reflections that displayed her wit, imagination, and intelligence. The diary entries were carefully structured, with Anne experimenting with narrative styles, descriptive passages, and introspective analysis. Even as a young teenager, her writing revealed remarkable sophistication and creativity. The diary also became a place where Anne explored her inner world and ambitions. She wrote about her hopes for the future, imagining a time when the war would end and she could pursue education, travel, and a career in writing. She reflected on her own identity, asking questions about who she was, what she wanted to achieve, and how she could contribute to society. These reflections reveal a young girl who, despite her circumstances, had a vision for her life and the courage to imagine possibilities beyond her immediate reality. Anne's passion for writing was also a source of emotional release. In the claustrophobic environment of the annex, arguments, fears, and daily frustrations were inevitable. Writing allowed Anne to articulate these feelings safely, without judgment or interruption. Through her diary, she developed resilience, transforming anxiety and fear into thoughtful reflection and creative expression. The legacy of Anne Frank's writing extends far beyond the pages of her diary. Her words provide a first-hand account of life during one of history's darkest periods, offering insight into both the personal and universal human experience. The diary captures the daily struggles, hopes, and dreams of a young girl who refused to let fear define her. It is a testament to the power of writing, imagination, and the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. In the secret annex, Anne's diary became more than paper and ink. It became her sanctuary. It was a place where she could dream, analyze, reflect, and create, despite the constant danger surrounding her. The act of writing gave her purpose, hope, and a voice that would eventually resonate around the world, inspiring millions with her courage, wisdom, and enduring humanity. Life in the secret annex was not only a test of survival, but also a period of emotional growth, particularly for Anne Frank. As a young teenager, she was navigating the normal challenges of growing up, forming her identity, understanding relationships, and discovering her own thoughts and feelings, but all under extraordinary circumstances. The hidden annex, though confining, became a microcosm of society where human emotions, conflicts, and connections played out intensely.
Anne's relationship with her parents continued to be complex. She adored her father, Otto Frank, who was calm, wise, and understanding. Otto was her confidant, her protector, and the person who encouraged her writing. Anne often shared her deepest thoughts and reflections with him, discussing her fears, dreams, and frustrations. In contrast, her relationship with her mother, Edith, was more strained. Anne sometimes felt misunderstood by her mother, who worried constantly about the dangers surrounding them. Edith often expected Anne to behave more maturely or conform to her ideas of proper conduct, which led to tension. Yet beneath the disagreements, there was love and concern, creating a dynamic that reflected typical parent-child struggles, intensified by the pressures of hiding. Anne's bond with her sister Margot was also significant. Margot, quiet and diligent, represented the calm and obedient side of the family. While Anne sometimes felt overshadowed by Margot's composure, she also relied on her sister for support, guidance, and companionship. The sisters shared moments of tenderness and care, helping each other navigate the fears and uncertainties of their confined life. Margot's presence offered Anne a sense of stability and comfort in an otherwise unpredictable world. One of the most pivotal relationships during Anne's time in hiding was with Peter Van Pels. Initially shy and reserved, Peter was older than Anne and somewhat aloof. Anne, curious and expressive, found it challenging to connect with him at first. However, over time, their friendship deepened. They shared long conversations, confided their fears, and discussed their hopes for life after the war. For Anne, Peter became a source of emotional connection and understanding. She admired his sensitivity and thoughtfulness, while Peter appreciated Anne's intelligence, humor, and vivacity. Their companionship was a rare source of comfort in a world full of uncertainty and danger. Living together in such close quarters naturally brought conflicts as well. Frustrations and disagreements were common. Anne often wrote about arguments, misunderstandings, and moments of tension in her diary. These conflicts, however, were part of the human experience and did not diminish the bonds of trust, care, and mutual dependence that developed among the annex residents. The challenges of sharing space, managing fear, and maintaining routines created a learning environment in which everyone had to adapt, compromise, and grow emotionally. During this period, Anne also began to develop a deeper understanding of herself. She reflected on her personality, her ambitions, and her place in the world. In her diary, she analyzed her moods, her mistakes, and her aspirations, showing remarkable self-awareness. She questioned human behavior, explored moral and ethical dilemmas, and considered the nature of courage, kindness, and resilience. These reflections were particularly profound given her age, just 13 or 14, and the extraordinary circumstances she faced. Despite the stress and fear, Anne found joy in small moments. She took pleasure in reading, writing, observing nature through the windows, and even in the quiet humor and camaraderie she shared with the other residents. These moments of happiness were essential, reminding her that life, even in confinement, could still offer beauty, learning, and connection. Through these experiences, Anne grew not only in knowledge and awareness, but also in emotional maturity. She learned the complexities of human relationships, the importance of empathy, and the strength required to endure hardship. Her time in hiding, while terrifying and restrictive, became a period of remarkable personal growth, shaping the resilient, insightful, and compassionate young woman who would leave an indelible mark on history. By the time Anne Frank had been in hiding for several months, the reality of their situation had fully set in. Life in the secret annex was a constant balancing act between fear and hope, confinement and imagination, danger and resilience. Every day required careful attention, careful movement, and careful thought. For Anne, this daily rhythm became a way to understand both the fragility and the strength of life. Fear was ever present. The families had to remain silent during the day when the office below was occupied. Every sound, footsteps, dropped items, or even a cough could potentially lead to discovery. News from the outside world, though limited, reminded them that Jews were being arrested and deported to concentration camps. Anne wrote in her diary about the tension that gripped her family each time Miep Gies or another helper brought supplies. The news was both vital and terrifying, reminding them of the stakes of every action and every choice.
Yet hope persisted alongside fear. Anne's diary was a sanctuary, a place to dream about the future. She imagined a life beyond the annex, a world where she could go to school freely, travel, and pursue her love of writing. She wrote letters to her imaginary friend Kitty, describing not only her fears, but also the things she longed to experience: freedom, friendship, education, and the simple joys of everyday life. These writings reveal a remarkable optimism and inner strength, even in a young girl confronted with extraordinary danger. Daily life in the annex followed a strict routine. The residents divided chores to ensure cleanliness and order. Cooking was challenging with limited ingredients, and meals had to be prepared quietly. They carefully rationed food, sometimes eating simple meals of bread, cheese, or vegetables. Showers and other necessities were limited, and personal space was scarce. For Anne, who had grown up in relative freedom, these adjustments were difficult. However, she found ways to maintain her sense of individuality and creativity within these limitations. Anne's observations of the world outside were keen. Through small windows or whispers of news from their helpers, she remained aware of the unfolding horrors of the war. She noted the changes in the streets of Amsterdam, the disappearance of friends and neighbors, and the stories of violence and persecution. Yet she also noticed acts of kindness and bravery, ordinary people risking their lives to help others. These moments inspired her reflections on human nature, morality, and the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the cramped quarters of the annex, the residents found moments of joy. Birthdays were celebrated quietly, and small traditions helped maintain a sense of normalcy. Anne, with her humor and energy, often lightened the mood, sharing jokes or playful stories. She also developed deeper connections with the other residents, particularly Peter van Pels, whose companionship provided both comfort and understanding. Together, they discussed their hopes for the future, shared books, and confided their fears. These interactions helped Anne maintain her humanity in an environment dominated by fear and uncertainty.
Anne's diary entries during this time also reveal her reflections on courage and moral responsibility. She wrote about the importance of kindness even under threat, and the ways in which hope and faith could survive in the darkest circumstances. For Anne, every small act of courage, whether sharing a kind word, offering support, or simply continuing to write, was a declaration of resistance against fear and oppression. In these months of hiding, Anne Frank learned lessons about life that were both harsh and inspiring. She discovered the fragility of safety, the value of human connection, and the strength that comes from hope and perseverance. The secret annex was a place of confinement, yet it became a space where her intellect, imagination, and moral insight flourished. Through fear and uncertainty, Anne's spirit grew stronger, leaving a record of resilience and courage that would resonate long after the world she knew had changed forever. As Anne Frank spent more time in the secret annex, her reflections grew deeper and more philosophical. Surrounded by fear, uncertainty, and the constant threat of discovery, she began to explore not only her own feelings, but also the nature of humanity itself. Through her writing, Anne developed remarkable insight into human behavior, morality, and the complex interplay of courage and cruelty.
Anne observed the people around her with keen attention. She noticed how stress, confinement, and fear could alter behavior, causing disagreements, irritability, or tension. At the same time, she recognized acts of bravery, kindness, and selflessness. Otto Frank's calm wisdom and patience, the quiet strength of Margot, and Peter's sensitivity all shaped her understanding of human character. Even in small daily interactions, Anne identified lessons about empathy, patience, and moral responsibility. Her diary became a mirror reflecting not just her own experiences, but the broader truths of life. Anne wrote about fairness, justice, and the importance of compassion even in the most challenging circumstances. She questioned why some people could act cruelly while others showed bravery and humanity. These reflections were extraordinary for a young girl, showing a level of maturity, thoughtfulness, and understanding far beyond her age. Anne also pondered the idea of hope and its power. She realized that even in the darkest moments, hope could give people the strength to endure. Writing became a tool for cultivating hope, not just for herself, but also as a way of documenting what human beings were capable of, both in cruelty and kindness. Every page of her diary demonstrated that even in confinement, one could grow intellectually, emotionally, and morally. Life in the annex tested the moral compass of everyone inside. They had to make difficult decisions daily. How to share food fairly, how to maintain silence without resentment, and how to support each other emotionally in a stressful environment. Anne reflected on these dilemmas, noting how people respond differently to adversity, and how small acts of generosity or courage could make a profound difference. Through her writing, she captured not just the events of hiding, but the ethical challenges of living in extreme circumstances. Anne's observations extended to the world beyond the annex as well. News of persecution, deportations, and violence reached the hidden families, reinforcing the importance of moral strength and resilience. Anne's diary shows her grappling with the contrast between cruelty and humanity, reflecting on how ordinary people could both inflict and resist suffering. This awareness shaped her worldview, giving her a sense of responsibility and hope for the future.
Despite the dangers, Anne continued to dream. She imagined a world where justice and compassion could prevail, where people could live without fear, and where individuals could express themselves freely. These reflections were not mere fantasies, They were guiding principles for how she wanted to live and how she wished humanity could evolve. Her writing became a testament to the belief that even young individuals could have profound moral insight and influence the way others perceive courage, kindness, and resilience. Through all of this, Anne's writing evolved into something more than a personal diary. It became a philosophical exploration, a moral compass, and a record of life's complexities during one of history's darkest periods. Her ability to reflect deeply, even in confinement, demonstrates the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. Anne Frank, though confined to a small annex, was learning lessons about life, morality, and humanity that would resonate with generations far beyond her time. As Anne Frank grew older in the secret annex, she faced the normal challenges of adolescence, self-discovery, emotions, and identity, but intensified by the extraordinary circumstances of hiding from the Nazis. Being a teenager is difficult under ordinary conditions, but for Anne it was even more complicated. Confined to a small space with limited privacy and constant fear, she had to navigate both the pressures of growing up and the reality of life under threat. Anne experienced mood swings, frustrations, and moments of impatience, all typical of teenage life. She often wrote about arguments with her mother, feeling misunderstood and constrained by her expectations. Edith Frank worried constantly about her daughter's safety and behavior, which sometimes created tension between mother and daughter. Anne also had moments of self-doubt, questioning her appearance, her talents, and her place in the world. Yet, through these struggles, she developed resilience and a strong sense of self-awareness, learning to reflect on her behavior and emotions critically. Her relationship with Peter Van Pels became increasingly important during this stage. Initially awkward and reserved, Peter gradually became a confidant and companion. They shared thoughts, fears, and dreams, helping each other cope with the stress of hiding. Anne's feelings for Peter were complex, sometimes teasing, sometimes shy, sometimes tender, but they provided her with emotional support and connection. These interactions were a rare source of normalcy in an otherwise extraordinary and tense environment. Friendship and connection were vital in the annex. Anne observed the behavior of those around her closely, learning about human psychology, empathy, and patience. Conflicts occasionally arose due to the small space and high stress, but they also allowed Anne to reflect on compromise, understanding, and the importance of maintaining harmony. She wrote extensively about the dynamics within the annex, capturing the emotional depth of living in confinement. Education and learning remained central to Anne's daily life. Even without formal schooling, she continued to read, study, and write. Books became a gateway to the world beyond the annex, allowing her to explore history, literature, science, and philosophy. Writing was her outlet and her teacher, helping her develop critical thinking, communication skills, and self-expression. Her diary entries became increasingly reflective and articulate, showing growth in both intellect and maturity. Anne's observations about herself and others were profound. She reflected on human nature, morality, and social behavior, often considering why people acted with kindness or cruelty. She also wrote about her dreams for the future, imagining a world where she could pursue her ambitions freely, travel, and contribute meaningfully to society. Despite being trapped in a small annex, Anne's mind remained free, curious, and full of hope. Daily life remained a delicate balance of routine and caution. The residents had to be vigilant about noise, manage limited food and resources, and maintain secrecy at all costs. Simple activities like walking from one room to another or preparing a meal required thought and care. These restrictions challenged Anne's patience and tested her emotional resilience, but they also fostered creativity, problem-solving, and adaptability. Through these months, Anne matured beyond her years. Her diary became more than a record of events. It became a space for self-discovery, reflection, and emotional growth. The challenges of adolescence, combined with the extraordinary circumstances of hiding, forged a young woman of remarkable insight, courage, and intelligence. Anne Frank's experiences during these years illustrate the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit and the power of hope even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Life in the secret annex was not just about survival, it was also about relationships, trust, and emotional support. For Anne Frank, these months of hiding provided an intense environment in which human connections became both a lifeline and a source of learning. In such a confined space, every word, gesture, and action mattered, shaping the daily lives and emotions of everyone involved. Anne's relationship with Peter Van Pels continued to grow in importance. Peter, initially shy and withdrawn, gradually revealed his intelligence, sensitivity, and thoughtfulness. Anne found in him a kindred spirit, someone who understood her frustrations, dreams, and fears. Their conversations ranged from ordinary topics like the monotony of life in hiding to deep reflections on humanity, morality, and the future. These exchanges helped Anne feel less isolated and gave her hope that meaningful connections could exist even in the most difficult circumstances. Trust was an essential element of life in the annex. The residents depended heavily on Miep Geese and a few other helpers for survival. These brave individuals risked their lives daily, bringing food, news, and supplies to the hidden families. Anne often reflected on the courage and kindness of these helpers, recognizing the moral strength required to act selflessly in a world where betrayal and fear were common. Their loyalty and bravery inspired Anne's understanding of human goodness, even amid the cruelty and injustice surrounding them. Within the annex, relationships were complex. Living in constant proximity created tension at times. Confined spaces, stress, and fear of discovery led to arguments and misunderstandings. Anne wrote openly in her diary about moments of irritation, jealousy, and frustration with her family and the Van Pels. Yet these conflicts also taught her important lessons about patience, empathy, and compromise. She learned how to navigate disagreements, how to respect boundaries, and how to maintain harmony under pressure, skills that are remarkable for anyone, let alone a young teenager in hiding. Anne also observed the growth of character in others. She admired her father, Otto, for his wisdom, patience, and ability to calm tense situations. Margot's quiet strength and thoughtfulness provided balance and stability. Peter, though initially awkward, demonstrated courage and sensitivity in small yet meaningful ways. These observations shaped Anne's understanding of human behavior, helping her appreciate the subtleties of character, moral courage, and the importance of empathy. Despite the confinement and fear, moments of joy were possible. Anne found delight in small pleasures, reading a book, writing in her diary, hearing news from Miep, or sharing a laugh with Peter or Margot. These moments, however fleeting, provided emotional sustenance and reminded her that even in difficult circumstances, life could still hold beauty and connection. Friendship and trust were not just comforting, they were essential for survival. The residents had to rely on each other, maintain discipline, and act with mutual respect. Every day required vigilance, yet the bonds they formed provided emotional resilience. Anne's diary captured these relationships with honesty, insight, and warmth. She wrote about the joys, frustrations, and lessons that came from living closely with others, creating a rich record of human interaction under extreme conditions. Through these experiences, Anne's understanding of human relationships deepened. She reflected on loyalty, courage, empathy, and moral responsibility, recognizing the complexity and significance of each. Even in fear and confinement, she learned that trust, kindness, and friendship were powerful forces that could sustain people emotionally and spiritually. The secret annex, while restrictive and dangerous, became a space where Anne's emotional intelligence and understanding of human nature flourished. In the bonds of the annex, Anne discovered that even in the darkest circumstances, connections with others could provide hope, strength, and meaning. These lessons, captured so vividly in her diary, remain a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, showing how friendship, trust, and compassion can endure even in the face of unimaginable adversity. While life in the secret annex was confined and controlled, Anne Frank never lost her curiosity about the world beyond the small rooms and hidden stairways. Every piece of news, every whisper from Miep geese or other helpers, and every distant sound of the outside world captured her attention and imagination. Despite the danger, Anne remained deeply aware of the larger context of the war and the suffering experienced by millions. The residents of the annex received news of the escalating persecution of Jews across Europe. Families were arrested, deported, or forced into labor camps. Friends and neighbors disappeared, often never to be seen again. Anne, through the fragments of information brought to the annex, began to understand the full scale of the Nazi atrocities. Each story of suffering outside reminded her of the fragility of their own safety, reinforcing the constant need for vigilance. Yet the news also brought hope and inspiration. Anne learned about acts of courage, selflessness, and resistance. Ordinary people risked their lives to save others, helping Jewish families escape or survive. These stories left a profound impression on Anne, showing her that even in a world filled with cruelty, kindness and bravery could flourish. She reflected deeply on the moral choices people made under pressure, considering what it meant to act with integrity in the face of danger. Anne's imagination expanded as she thought about the world outside. She dreamed of traveling, learning, and experiencing life beyond the confines of the annex. She envisioned walking freely in the streets of Amsterdam, attending school without fear, and exploring distant places she had only read about in books. These thoughts were both a comfort and a source of motivation. They reminded her that life existed beyond the walls of fear, and that the world still held opportunities for growth, adventure, and fulfillment. She also became increasingly aware of history and the impact of political events on ordinary lives. Anne reflected on the rise of Hitler and the consequences of hatred, discrimination, and intolerance. She wrote about the responsibility of individuals to act with morality and courage, emphasizing the need to stand up for justice even when it is difficult or dangerous. Her diary entries reveal a young mind capable of profound insight, connecting personal experiences in hiding with broader social, political, and ethical issues. Anne's curiosity extended to people as well. She observed the behavior of others with remarkable clarity, noting the differences between fear-driven actions and those motivated by compassion. She admired the bravery of Miep and the helpers, recognized the complexities of human emotion in confined conditions, and reflected on how adversity could shape character. These reflections demonstrate Anne's ability to think critically and empathetically, even in a world constrained by secrecy and fear. Despite the limitations of the annex, Anne never let her mind be confined. She wrote about the possibilities of the future, imagined life after the war, and thought about the lessons humanity could learn from such dark times. Her reflections on the outside world were not passive. They shaped her understanding of herself, her responsibilities, and the power of hope. Through her awareness of the world outside, Anne developed resilience, moral clarity, and a broader perspective. She understood that life extended far beyond the hidden annex, and that the values of courage, empathy, and hope were essential not only for survival, but also for building a better future. Even in confinement, Anne's mind and spirit remained free, drawing strength from knowledge, reflection, and the enduring dream of a life beyond fear. Life in the secret annex was not just physically restrictive, it was emotionally demanding in ways that challenged every resident.
For Anne Frank, the confinement brought moments of deep reflection, frustration, and sometimes despair. Being trapped in a small space, constantly aware of danger, and having to navigate tense relationships created a unique emotional landscape that shaped her adolescence and her perspective on life. Anne often felt the weight of isolation. She missed the freedom of the outside world, the ability to walk in the streets, to attend school, to play with friends, and to experience ordinary teenage life. The annex, though safe, was a cage of invisible walls. She wrote candidly in her diary about the longing for fresh air, sunlight, and the simple joys of normal life. These entries reveal the emotional toll of confinement and the profound sense of loss that comes with being cut off from the world. Tensions with her mother were a recurring source of emotional struggle. Anne sometimes felt misunderstood and criticized, while Edith Frank worried constantly about the family's safety. These dynamics caused friction, leading Anne to seek solace and understanding in her diary. Her writing became a space where she could articulate her feelings without judgment, allowing her to process complex emotions like frustration, fear, and longing.
The close quarters also amplified minor irritations into major conflicts. Arguments with other residents, disagreements over chores, or small misunderstandings could feel magnified due to the lack of personal space. Anne wrote openly about these conflicts, reflecting on her own reactions and the behavior of others. She learned to navigate emotional challenges, practicing patience, empathy, and conflict resolution, skills that were essential for maintaining harmony in such an intense environment. Despite these struggles, Anne also experienced moments of joy and wonder. She found comfort in reading, writing, and observing the small details of life through the windows of the annex. She delighted in the changing seasons, the patterns of sunlight, and the subtle beauty of nature, even from her confined vantage point. These small observations became a source of emotional sustenance, helping her to remain grounded and hopeful. Anne's relationships within the annex were central to managing emotional strain. Her growing bond with Peter Van Pels provided companionship, understanding, and support. Through conversations, shared moments of humor, and mutual empathy, Anne found someone who could relate to her experiences and provide comfort during difficult times. Her relationship with her father, Otto, was another pillar of emotional stability, as he offered guidance, reassurance, and encouragement throughout their time in hiding. Fear was another constant companion. Every sound from the building below, every distant siren, and every piece of news from the outside reminded the residents of the dangers surrounding them. Anne often described the anxiety that came with each delivery of supplies or news from Miep and the helpers. Yet, she also wrote about the courage required to face fear daily, emphasizing that hope and resilience were powerful tools against despair. Through these emotional struggles, Anne Frank's inner world developed in extraordinary ways. She learned to reflect deeply on her feelings, analyze human behavior, and find strength in hope, creativity, and relationships. Her diary became more than a record of events. It became a guide for understanding the complexity of human emotions and the resilience required to navigate extreme adversity. Anne's reflections on emotional life in the annex reveal the remarkable depth of her character. Despite fear, confinement, and uncertainty, she maintained hope, compassion, and curiosity. She understood that emotional resilience was essential for survival, and she documented these lessons with honesty, intelligence, and insight. The secret annex, though restrictive, became a space for profound emotional growth, shaping Anne into a young woman whose courage and insight continue to inspire the world. Life in the secret annex was made possible not only by the courage and resilience of the Frank family and the Van Pels, but also by the extraordinary bravery of those who risked everything to help them.
The helpers, Miep Gies, her husband Jan, Victor Kugler, and others, played a critical role in keeping the hidden families alive, demonstrating acts of selflessness that would forever be remembered in history. Miep Gies, in particular, was a constant source of support and encouragement. She brought food, medicine, and supplies, often putting herself in danger by sneaking into Nazi-controlled areas. Through her actions, she showed extraordinary courage, loyalty, and moral strength. Anne's diary entries often reflected her admiration for Miep and the other helpers, recognizing that their bravery and kindness were as crucial to survival as the hiding itself.
The helpers not only provided material assistance, but emotional support. They shared news from the outside world, offering glimpses of normal life and hope for the future. Each visit from Miep or the others was a reminder that the annexed residents were not entirely alone, that the world outside still contained goodness, and that their survival depended on trust and courage. Anne often wrote about these visits with gratitude and awe, understanding the risks the helpers took to sustain them. Living in hiding required the annex residents to rely heavily on these helpers, creating a delicate balance of trust and secrecy. They could not afford to make mistakes or reveal their location. The helpers' courage was mirrored by the discipline and careful planning of the families themselves. Together, they formed an extraordinary network of cooperation and bravery that allowed life in the annex to continue despite the constant threat of discovery. Anne also reflected on moral courage displayed by ordinary people. She admired not only those who actively helped, but also those who maintained integrity, honesty, and empathy during a time when fear and oppression tempted others to act selfishly. Her diary entries demonstrate an acute awareness of how moral choices define character, highlighting the importance of kindness, empathy, and bravery even in the most difficult circumstances. The helpers' commitment went far beyond routine assistance. They risked severe punishment, imprisonment, or even death to bring food, news, and supplies. They remained vigilant, careful, and loyal, demonstrating that acts of courage are not always grandiose. They often take place quietly, in the service of others, under the constant shadow of danger. Anne recognized this and documented it, showing a remarkable capacity for gratitude, insight, and moral reflection for someone so young. Through these experiences, Anne learned valuable lessons about human nature, morality, and resilience. She understood that survival depended not only on physical safety, but also on trust, cooperation, and ethical behavior. The helpers exemplified courage in action, teaching Anne about the power of selflessness and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when the consequences are severe. Anne's diary captures these lessons vividly. She wrote not just about fear, confinement, and daily life, but also about the extraordinary character of those who supported her family. Her reflections remind readers that even in the darkest times, acts of kindness, courage, and moral integrity can make an immense difference. The secret annex, while physically small, became a space in which the human spirit, embodied in the bravery of helpers and the resilience of its residents, shone brightly. Through her writing, Anne immortalized the bravery of these individuals, ensuring that their selfless acts would never be forgotten. The story of the annex is not only about hiding and survival, but also about the extraordinary courage of ordinary people whose compassion and integrity made life possible for those trapped in unimaginable circumstances. Even in the confined and tense environment of the secret annex, Anne Frank's imagination and dreams never faded. Writing in her diary allowed her to escape, even temporarily,
from the reality of fear and limitation. She envisioned a life beyond the walls, a world of freedom, learning, adventure, and possibilities that fueled her hope and kept her spirit alive.
Anne dreamed of traveling to new places, meeting people from different cultures, and experiencing the world firsthand. Her love for reading had opened doors to history, literature, and geography, sparking a desire to explore beyond the annex. She imagined walking freely through the streets of Amsterdam without fear, attending school, visiting parks, museums, and libraries, and experiencing the richness of life that she had been denied. These dreams provided her with a mental sanctuary, a place where she could maintain a sense of agency, control, and freedom despite her physical confinement. Writing itself was a form of liberation. Anne's diary allowed her to express feelings she could not voice aloud, from frustration and anger to hope and excitement. She composed short stories, essays, and reflections, experimenting with narrative techniques and descriptive language. Each page became a canvas for her imagination, a space where she could create, reflect, and plan for the future. Her creativity was not merely an escape, it was also a way to understand herself, the world around her, and the principles she valued. Anne's aspirations were deeply intertwined with her moral and intellectual growth. She wrote about wanting to contribute meaningfully to society, to educate, to write, and to inspire others. Her diary captures her ambition to use words and stories to illuminate truth, humanity, and hope. She believed that life, even after immense suffering, could be filled with purpose and meaning. This vision was extraordinary for a young teenager living under such dangerous and oppressive circumstances. Even in moments of fear, Anne's imagination provided comfort. She could envision a future where danger no longer constrained her, where opportunities for learning and personal growth were limitless. She considered how she could pursue a career in writing, dreaming of publishing stories and reflections that might help others understand the human experience. Her diary entries are filled with reflections on personal growth, moral responsibility, and the value of resilience, illustrating how deeply she contemplated her place in the world and her potential impact. Anne's aspirations also extended to relationships and social life. She thought about friendships, love, and human connection, contemplating how these experiences would shape her future. Her bond with Peter Van Pels sparked thoughts about companionship and empathy, providing her with emotional insight that complemented her intellectual growth. These reflections demonstrate Anne's remarkable ability to consider both internal and external dimensions of life, blending emotional intelligence with creative aspiration. In the annex, where physical freedom was impossible, Anne's mind remained free. She used her writing to navigate the tension between fear and hope, confinement and imagination, reality and dreams. Her diary became a testament to the power of creativity and aspiration in sustaining the human spirit. Even in hiding, Anne Frank's dreams were vivid, ambitious, and enduring, reflecting a resilience and depth that continue to inspire readers today. Through her aspirations and imagination, Anne demonstrated that even in extreme adversity, hope and creativity could flourish. The secret annex, though a place of restriction, became a space where her intellect, moral insight, and visionary thinking could thrive. Her writing and dreams ensured that her spirit transcended the physical confines of her environment, leaving a legacy that continues to illuminate the power of resilience, imagination, and hope. As the months in hiding continued, Anne's diary evolved from a personal outlet into a profound record of human experience, hope, and resilience. Her observations, dreams, and reflections transcended her age, providing insights into life under oppression and the power of the human spirit to endure hardship. Even though she was confined to a small annex, her mind and heart reached far beyond those walls, leaving a lasting legacy for the world.
Anne's diary captures the essence of what it means to live fully, even in extreme adversity. She documented daily life in meticulous detail, the routines, chores, fears, and small joys, but she also reflected on universal human themes: morality, kindness, courage, empathy, and hope. Her ability to find meaning in small moments, to reflect on human behavior, and to dream of a better future demonstrates extraordinary emotional and intellectual maturity. Through her writing, Anne teaches us the importance of hope in the darkest times. Even with constant fear, deprivation, and uncertainty, Anne imagined a life beyond confinement. She dreamed of freedom, learning, travel, friendship, and making a meaningful impact on the world. This capacity for hope, coupled with her courage and creativity, shows how resilience is cultivated not only through action, but also through thought, reflection, and the imagination. Anne Frank's story is also a powerful lesson about the importance of empathy and moral responsibility. She observed the actions of those around her, the helpers who risked their lives, the conflicts that arose in the annex, and the behavior of ordinary people during extraordinary circumstances. She reflected on the choices people make under pressure, the consequences of cruelty and kindness, and the enduring value of integrity. These lessons remain relevant today, reminding us that moral courage and compassion are essential in building a better society. The legacy of Anne Frank extends far beyond the diary itself. Her story has inspired millions worldwide, teaching lessons about resilience, courage, hope, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. She shows us that even in moments of fear and oppression, it is possible to dream, to reflect, and to act with empathy and bravery. Anne's words continue to resonate, reminding us that one person's voice, even a young girl's, can leave an impact that lasts for generations. As we reflect on Anne's life, it is clear that her diary is more than a historical document. It is a source of inspiration and guidance. It encourages readers to cherish freedom, nurture hope, and approach life with empathy and integrity. Anne's ability to grow emotionally, morally, and intellectually in the confines of the annex remains extraordinary, and it stands as a testament to the resilience of youth and the potential of the human spirit.
The story of Anne Frank reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, light can persist. Her diary is a symbol of courage, creativity, and hope. It challenges us to reflect on our own lives, to act with kindness, and to value the freedoms and opportunities we often take for granted. Anne's words continue to teach, inspire, and resonate, proving that even a single life, lived with honesty and courage, can leave a profound mark on the world. Thank you so much for watching. We hope Anne Frank's story has inspired you as much as it has inspired millions around the world. Her courage, hope, and wisdom remind us to value our freedom, pursue our dreams, and act with empathy and kindness every day. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Whispered Tales.